Chapter 17. Clara. Philip clicked his heels and his soldiers snapped to attention. The drawbridge began to lower. Wisps of foggy mist rolled along the divide, spilling onto the palace grounds. Sugarplum lightly touched Clara on the arm. "Mother Ginger fooled us once before with her devious ways," she whispered in her ear. "Don't let her deceive you now." The drawbridge locked into place with a resounding thunk. And just like that, the chasm dividing the fourth realm from the rest was sealed. Clara took a deep breath. There was no going back now. The mission was underway. She had to be brave. They must succeed. For her mother. The troops began marching across the bridge. As soon as their feet touched the land of the fourth realm, fog enveloped them, masking both vision and footsteps alike. But still they marched forward, resolute. It wasn't long before they reached the forest's edge. Foreboding trees loomed tall, many with rotting, barren branches hanging at odd angles. Pine trees were clustered tightly together, the needles packed so densely anything could be hiding in there unseen, just waiting to jump out. Some of the soldiers began whispering nervously to one another. "This way! Mush! Mush! Hurry up!" Dewdrop heckled them, flitting this way and that in the mist. "Stand firm," Philip encouraged his troops. A sudden gust whooshed past ominously. Dewdrop tumbled in the air, flung off course. "Dangerous flying conditions, these," she muttered. "I might just return to base." "You will do no such thing," Philip instructed her. "This will not be like the last 4 times where you decided you'd rather have tea and biscuits than complete your task. Please stay with us," Clara pleaded. "We need you." Dewdrop scoffed. "Needy, yes. Isn't that always the way with princesses? My hair, my dress, my key," Clara interjected. "That's all I need, my key." "As does everyone in the realms," Philip shot Dewdrop a pointed look, "including you." A distant rumbling noise suddenly came from under their feet. Clara couldn't be certain, but she thought she felt the ground move. "Did you hear that?" Philip whispered. Everyone listened in dreadful silence. Faint squeaks echoed from somewhere. But in the thickening fog, it was nearly impossible to see what was around them. 3 soldiers beside Clara whispered in fear. Whatever terrifying stories they had heard about Mother Ginger and her mice had worked in the old woman's favor. Their resolve was wavering. Clara couldn't let that happen. She and Philip couldn't do this alone. They had to keep the soldiers strong. "Hold these out in front of you." Clara ignited several torches and began passing them out to the shaky platoon. "Mice don't like fire." "Are you sure you want to continue?" Philip whispered to Clara. "I'm not leaving the fourth realm until I have that key in my hand," she replied. "So where you go, I go." Suddenly there was a muffled cry in the darkness. Clara wheeled around. Hadn't there been 3 soldiers beside her? Now there were only 2. "I'm sure we're nearly there," she said unsteadily. Another cry echoed to the right. "What's happening?" Clara asked. Stay together, men," Philip ordered. "Tight formation." The thick rolling fog parted suddenly, allowing a shaft of moonlight to pierce through to the ground. It shone upon something in the darkness. A ghastly monster with sharp white teeth that glinted in the soldiers' torchlight. "There's something there," Clara cried. "Stand back, Your Majesty," one of the soldiers shouted. He thrust his sword at the menacing creature, a direct hit in its fiendish yellow eye. But strangely, the creature didn't howl or blink. It didn't even move. Clara cautiously reached out. In the flickering torchlight, she caught sight of the creature's scales, wings, and long pointy tail. And then, chipped paint? A pole running right through it? "A carousel ride?" she asked. The soldiers held their torches high. Sure enough, they were standing before a dilapidated carousel, overgrown with vines and roots. Carved swans, tigers, and dragons lay strewn about in the fog, pieces chipped off and limbs missing. The carousel's lamps had long since gone out, its controls covered with rust and grime. I know this carousel, Clara thought, a rush of memory flooding back. It's the carousel I worked on in Godfather's workshop, the one Mother tested me with. Clara had always wondered what her mother had done with the carousel when it finally disappeared from Drosselmeyer's workshop. She assumed that her godfather had helped Marie move it to a basement somewhere in the estate, or that they had even sold it to a carnival. But it's so large, Clara marveled. How on earth? Then her mother's words came back to her. I think I might have a place for it, her mother had said. That is a lesson for another day. The realms, Clara realized. She brought it to the realms and made it full size. All right, then go potty. And she wanted to show me how it did it one day, together. Clara gazed sadly at the mechanical masterpiece fallen to ruins. Her heart broke a little to see it in pieces. Broke a little for the lesson she would never share with her mother. Who would have thought? The ground rumbled beneath them again, and everyone instinctively clambered aboard the base of the carousel. Clara saw Philip do a quick head count. We're missing 4 men, he said. We'll never find them in this fog. Clara glanced at the controls. They were just the same as she remembered. Yeah, maybe we can guide them to us. She quickly picked her way over broken shards of ceramic and glass and began rooting around in the rusty mechanism. She dug out 2 frayed wires. Perfect, she thought. All it needs is a spark. She touched them together and called to Philip. Turn that handle. She pointed to the large crank handle protruding from the carousel's center column. Philip did as she asked. As he cranked, a spark flew from the wires in Clara's hands. Instantly, Mommy, the carousel's lights...
What time is it?
It is 12:24 on that clock. Instantly, the carousel's lights flashed to life, and the soldiers were able to get their first proper look at what remained of the fourth realm. Yep.
12:24?
Yep. All around them lay a wasteland of broken life-size dolls, rusting and abandoned. The skeleton of a Ferris wheel leaned crooked against a tree. A steam engine toppled on its side at the base. Shattered remnants of tea-potty china and splintered tables were heaped about. Carriages were upended, their wheels missing. It was like a forgotten battleground of children's toys. Clara stared aghast. What's happened here? Mother Ginger, Philip replied grimly. The ground shook yet again, only this time the rumbles seemed to be getting closer. Then with a terrifying lurch, the carousel began sinking. Run! Philip cried to his soldiers. The troops scattered in the fog, racing between the trees and tripping over crumbling toy remains. Holes began opening up everywhere in the ground. The unmistakable squeak of 1,000 mice shrieked up from the depths. The mice are making sinkholes, Philip realized. Everyone, watch your step. But it was too late. One by one, soldiers disappeared beneath the surface. As soon as they dodged one hole, another would open up directly in front of them. Clara looked around in horror. Their whole team was vanishing. They had to get to safety and regroup. Clara ran straight for a tall tree, ready to climb. But before she could reach it, an enormous sinkhole opened before her. She leaped over it, only to have a second sinkhole immediately open where she was about to land. No! Clara screamed. Clara! Philip cried, realizing what was about to happen. He skidded to a stop at the edge of the hole and reached wildly for her hand. He grabbed it just in time. Hang on! He shouted. Clara looked down, her feet dangling helplessly above an infinite black abyss. I can't, she cried. I can't hold on. Clara's hand slipped, and she fell. Clara! Philip screamed after her as she tumbled down into the unknown. She scratched wildly at the hole's walls, desperately trying to slow her descent. Her hands scraped against sharp rocks and tangled roots, but nothing eased her fall until finally she landed with a thud on what felt like a soft carpet upon the ground. Clara looked down. She screamed in revulsion. The carpet was actually a sea of wretched furry mice. They crawled up and over her legs and arms, clawing at her hair. "Get off me!" she screamed. "Get off!" The mice lurched beneath her, carrying her on the wave of her furry backs down the earthen tunnel. The motion continued, sweeping her along another corridor and up toward the surface before, whoop! The mice flung her out into the foggy air, back above the surface. She rolled along the cold, hard ground, breathing heavily. Inexplicably, the mice scampered down off her arms and hair and scattered into the shadows. All at once, Clara was completely alone. She stood up uncertainly. "Philip," she called. "Dewdrop!"
Mommy, I got 10
"Good!" "So, young lady," a voice thundered high above her head. The fog cleared, revealing a massive marionette towering over Clara. Its twisted face was curled into a hideous smile. Its skirt was wide as a circus tent. "Mother Ginger," Clara realized with a cold feeling in the pit of her stomach. The fearsome creature scooped Clara up in its palm, bringing her to eye level. "You dare to come to my realm," it boomed. "Just who do you think you are?" Clara knew she should be frightened, but something about facing off with the sinister Mother Ginger, being eye to eye with the creature who had destroyed part of her mother's creation and threatened the rest, made her angry. She squared her shoulders, staying strong. She had to think of the key and the realms and her mother. "I'm Clara Stallbaum," she proclaimed. "Is that so?" Mother Ginger's voice echoed. It came from the marionette, but its lips never moved, remaining ever twisted into a grotesque smile. "Yes," Clara declared, "and I have come to reclaim what you have taken from me and my mother, my key." Mother Ginger laughed, a force so terrifying Clara lost her balance in the marionette's palm. "I'm not scared of you," Clara shouted. "You're just a doll." At that, the entire marionette began to quake. Before Clara knew what was happening, the hand holding her whooshed down and swept Clara under Mother Ginger's skirt. She tumbled head over heels, somersaulting to a stop in the dusty earth. She coughed and raised her head. Layers upon layers of tattered tulle made up the inside of Mother Ginger's skirt, eerily colorful compared to the bleak desolation of the fourth realm. And then something emerged from the tulle, a clown with two gleaming yellow eyes.